searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. And man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Sing it out. Oh, then you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Hey, and oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, and nothing is better than you. Oh, I know it's true. song I sing and the love I need. And without it, I'm not living. So I will exalt you, Lord. I will exalt you, Lord. There is no one like you, God. Jesus. Jesus. Don't let that be lost on us. The incredible privilege of being in your presence, of doing your work, Jesus. God is chasing after you. He's chasing after every heart in this room. And He desires to use your life, to put your life in spaces, in places where there's darkness, where there's wounding, and in spaces where those things are not readily apparent. And as we walk in faith and obedience as a people, He is faithful to provide what we need. And I know that that is true this morning. And with any ounce of anything that is in me, I want to convince you that it is true this morning. So thank you, Jesus, for being present. Thank you for sending your Holy Spirit. Thank you for dwelling with us. Thank you for pursuing people. Thank you for hanging on harder than we ever will have the capacity to. Thank you simply for who you are. I worship your holy name. So as we take these 5 minutes, go say hi to somebody. Oh, I can make a quick announcement. No rangers tonight. If you've got a ranger, he won't be here tonight, but we do have kids. So go drop your kids off back there. Say hi to somebody and be back here in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good morning. It's good to have you here this morning. A little bit different this morning. We have a guest speaker, Jenny Williams, who I'll introduce here in a moment. She is here because Pastor Dutch is out of town. And when I say out of town, I mean Finland. So that's a long way out of town. But the report is he's arrived safely and he's there. He's going to be participating in a pastor's conference that will begin tomorrow. So you can be remembering him in prayer as he leads much of that effort. One thing I wanted to mention was just a thank you very much. We are in the midst of our season of giving. Last week was the week that we turned in the shoe boxes for Samaritan's Purse, and there was a great turnout as those boxes came into the office. One of the problems that we faced was that some of the boxes would not close. There was way too much in the shoe boxes. So we got to practice our jigsaw puzzle skills to pack things in. But thank you for your support there. And the season of giving is continuing. There is the tree out in the foyer that still has tags on it for giving to Compassion International. And we are also contributing toward Martha's House, the new emergency shelter that the City Mission is preparing for mothers and children. We'll be hearing a little bit more about that, but that is available for giving online or through check as well. But thank you for your generosity there. Jenny Williams is here this morning, and we're glad to have her. She is from the Family Resource Center, organization here in town that does an awful lot of work, good work, with those that are dealing with mental health issues, addiction, and recovery, and doing that through so many different avenues and touching the lives of individuals and families in many ways. We as a church share common ground with the Family Resource Center, and that common ground begins with a love for people. And our participation as a church in God's work in the lives of people, the Family Resource Center making such conscientious and conscious efforts to reach out to people in need in so many different areas. Jenny, we welcome you this morning, and we look forward to hearing you.
Goodness, thank you so much for such a warm and energized welcome here this morning. My husband plays in the praise band at our church, and so obviously wasn't able to be with me here today. He and my son are actually headed to the Bengals Steelers football game today, but I feel that he's going to be excited to hear what I share in terms of your praise band and your opening, because it definitely moved me this morning. And so I feel a real honor and privilege to talk with you today. And I want to start with posing a kind of rhetorical question. And that is, at what point for you does the holiday season begin? For some of us, that may be the moment we start to see glimpses of decorations and items in the stores, which always seems to get earlier and earlier now, every year. For some of us, the kickoff to the holiday season may have begun this past week with marking the celebration of Thanksgiving. For some of us, that may be next Sunday when Advent season begins. But for some people, the holiday season begins with a deep sense of dread, emotional pain, that some of us cannot always relate to. And oftentimes, that pain and sadness and really desire just for the holiday season to end is often rooted in grief, loss, and loneliness. And while we may kind of acknowledge that it is the season of love and light and joy, being able to understand that for some people, that emotional pain gives them a different experience can really help us be able to walk with somebody through that season and through that time. And so today I want to talk about an experience that I like to call the journey of grief. And I know they told me to point this, there we go. And I think that grief is a subject that we do not readily talk about. It is something that we are often incredibly uncomfortable talking about. And I think that there are two reasons why that is the case. I think that number one, it is an incredibly unique, an incredibly personal experience. I think the other reason that it is very difficult to talk about is because we are not ever really taught what grief is, how we experience it, and oftentimes even what to expect as we are experiencing grief. And that is often why I describe grief as the common denominator. It is something that each and every one of us in this room experiences. We may experience it as the result of being the person who is grieving, or we may experience it being part of somebody's circle of people as they walk through a particular journey of grief. We often as a society also don't expand an understanding that grief is more than just the emotions we experience when we have a death loss. Grief is something we experience when we go through a divorce or an end to a romantic relationship. Grief is something we can experience when we face a health crisis with ourselves or somebody we love or care about. Grief is something we experience when we have an estranged or difficult relationship. Grief is also something we experience when we have had a past or a current trauma that has impacted our lives. And so I share these images with you that maybe some of you recognize, but they are from Yosemite National Park. In that middle picture, I'm standing in one of the large redwood trees, and I view these images as something that kind of represents a full circle of a grief experience or journey that I took several years ago. But before I share that with you, I want to give you a little bit of insight about why I feel so passionate about this subject. I always say I'm old. I've been in behavioral health care a really long time. I started my career in 1992. And early on in my career, I used to do what's called pre-screenings. So I would go to either the jails or the emergency departments, and I would screen people for whether or not they needed to be hospitalized due to their mental health experience. And one night, I was in the emergency department, and there had been a tragic accident, and people came in, and a young man was dying. His friends had been trying desperately to save him throughout the time that they had found him. And some of the nurses and doctors, because I was there doing a pre-screen, said, "Hey, could you hang around just in case any of these people need to talk to somebody?" And I said, "Certainly." So they took me in the room while they tried to save this young man's life, and they were not able to do so. And I had one of the most profound spiritual experiences I have ever had in my life. I felt the presence of God in that room in a way that I had never experienced before, and I knew that was the place I was supposed to be. And There's often referred to the Mr. Rogers saying that, like, in times of crisis, look for the helpers. And I do think that that's really true. But what I noticed in that room that night is that even the helpers kind of started to back away. People didn't know how to talk to these friends who had just tried to save and ended up losing their friend. People were apprehensive about talking to this young man's wife who had been called and was on her way to the hospital. And that struck me in an incredibly powerful way. And so I really started to dig in and learn more about death and dying and grief and loss, and how could I be one of the helpers that didn't back away and felt comfortable talking about grief and loss. So I did a lot of exploration with that and really found a lot of passion and energy around it. And then in 2012, I was at work, and I had left work to go get gas, grab some food, because I had to come back to work and do an evening presentation. And I was at the old Speedway. Any of you that have been in Findlay a long time, but before we had the new Speedway over on Trenton Avenue, I was at the old Speedway gas station. My telephone rang, and it was my dad. And I was getting gas, had to be back at my job in about 10 minutes. And I thought, I don't have time to answer this phone call. I'll call him later. My dad had been retired for about 2 years. He was a dairy farmer, and he was at Yosemite National Park. He had been there for about 6 weeks with his wife, and they were traveling. We were exchanging emails and talking about the beauty of the park. We were reading sections of John Muir's book talking about Yosemite National Park. And I said, I don't have time to get in this deep conversation about what he had seen that day. So I didn't answer the phone. Went to work, went about my next day, was en route to a meeting, and got a phone call from my stepmother. And I thought, well, this is odd. Must be my dad. Maybe his phone ran out of batteries or they didn't have reception. I answered it to find out that my dad had collapsed, and first responders were trying desperately to save him. About 15 minutes later, I got a phone call from her again that said he had passed away. My world was rocked like I could not even fathom. I had deep, immediate regret about different things I had not said, done, and especially for not answering that telephone call. So that took me on a journey for about 2 years that totally changed some of my professional direction and also just, my personal experiences. And what it also did is it exposed me to a new approach to think about grief and loss. And it really started with trying to understand a way to understand what this pain I was feeling was really connected to and what it was all about. And being the good mental health helper that I am, I thought, I will go and I will learn more. Because certainly if I learn more, that will just take care of how I feel. So for many years, I had read about a particular method. It's called of dealing with grief and loss. And so I signed up for this week-long training, and I had my notebooks and was all ready to go learn. And I walked into the conference center. I went to Indianapolis for the training, and I walked into a room, and the first thing I saw was a circle of chairs and a box of Kleenex at every seat. And I text one of my coworkers and I said, oh boy, I'm in big trouble because this is not going to be about me learning how to help other people. I'm going to have to help me first. And that scared me to death. And I stand here today and tell you it was one of the best decisions I made not to run, even though I was really, really tempted to run. But it introduced me to a new approach related to grief called the grief recovery method. And I want to begin by talking to you about kind of the basic definitions about what grief is. And first and foremost, grief is the normal, natural reaction to loss. And we may say, well, of course it is. That sounds obvious. It's normal. It's a natural reaction. But I want to really use an illustration to point out to you and share with you kind of how we don't really operate that way. And Pastor found me a wonderful, willing volunteer to come up and chat with me to demonstrate this. So, before we started, I had said to Keith, I said, tell me about something that is a joyous, happy occasion. So share with everybody what you told me.
So a few days ago, we celebrated Thanksgiving, and of course, I have 3 grandchildren who have lots of energy, 8, 4, and 2. So that was, and getting down on the floor and wrestling with them and doing all that fun stuff. Very joyous occasion.
Okay, so can you tell us maybe what were some of the emotions you felt while you were spending time with your grandkids?
Just love and seeing them laugh, seeing them enjoy the time, picking on each other, just the time together.
Sure, okay. So probably joy, happiness, fun, laughter,
Yep.
all of those things. So if anybody else were in the room with you, how might they have known you were experiencing those emotions?
Just by the evidence of those things, you know,
Okay, that's
continuing on. I mentioned to someone earlier, they said how loud it was, and I go, I really can't say anything because I probably contribute to that, how loud it was. So, but just the laughter and
Sure, so you
just
were
having
probably
fun. Yeah.
smiling, laughing, sharing the experience with everybody who was in the room. Did you take any pictures?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a few.
A few,
Yeah.
Okay. So have you shared any of those pictures, whether it's from this past holiday or just of your grandkids in general with other people, maybe even people here in your church family?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of conversation do you have when you share those?
Well, it's usually one-sided with me doing all
Okay.
the talking, right? And saying, hey, here's the 8-year-old, here's the 4-year-old,
Yeah.
here's the 2-year-old, giving a description of them and how much fun they are.
Okay. So would anybody in here disagree that what he's sharing were normal, natural reactions to a joyous occasion, right? I see lots of heads nodding. Everybody kind of feels that that's normal, natural. So I want to challenge you a bit. Let's say a month from now, you and your family are having dinner with somebody that, you know, maybe you didn't get to see during the holiday season, and you talk about Thanksgiving, you talk about Christmas, and you mention your grandkids. Do you think anybody is going to say, okay, that was a month ago. You should be over that by now. That happiness, that joy, like, what's going on? Is anybody going to say that to you?
I don't think so.
Okay. If you have smiles, laughter, and I can feel as you're talking about it, right? I can feel the energy, that it was a joyous celebration. It was a great experience for you. My guess is also somebody is not going to say, you know, enough with the smiles. It's time to get on. It's time to get back to life as normal, right? Nobody's probably going to say that to you.
No.
Okay. So thank you for playing along with me. I appreciate it. But how many times do we express those things to people that are grieving? It may be the end of a relationship. And we may have really good intentions, but saying to somebody, okay, it's been a couple of months, it's time to get back out there, it's time to get on with life. We even, as a society, have times where we experience a death loss, and we only give people 3 days to get back to work. Yet, physically and emotionally, we aren't ready for that. We do not treat difficult emotions in the same way that we treat positive, joyous emotions. And if I could leave you with anything today, it would be to kind of change your perspective on how you view your own comfort level with that. If we have a friend or a family member, we have to go to a funeral home visitation, and oftentimes our first thoughts as we're standing in line is, what am I gonna say? I hope I don't say the wrong thing. We feel uncomfortable about watching somebody's painful emotions. Yet, we do not describe positive emotions as anything other than normal and natural. And I would challenge you to think about, how do we help those that are hurting by understanding that those are normal, natural reactions to a loss. And that is a different perspective that many of us, don't often think about. The second element of grief is that grief is the conflicting feelings we have when we experience the end of or a change in a familiar pattern of behavior. So this weekend, my son was home. He's grown up, just turned 29. And he said, Mom, I would really like to have all of my childhood Christmas ornaments. I was that mom that got an ornament every year, plus all their school, things that were made. And it hit me. And I had conflicting feelings about that, because I'm like, well, wait. When I get ready to put up my Christmas tree, it's not going to be like it used to be. All of Drew's ornaments will not be on that tree. So I had some conflicting feelings about that. It was a bit of sadness, and it was a bit of reality that time moves on, and he now has, his own family and traditions that he wants to follow and carry on what he had as a child. And I can have joy about that, and I can have pride about that, and also I can still feel a little sad about it. So I can have those conflicting feelings about that familiar pattern of behavior that I've had with putting up the kids' Christmas ornaments for 29 years. We may have a death loss of somebody very close to us who has had a long-term illness and has been in pain and has been suffering. And oftentimes people will say, well, don't feel bad, they're no longer suffering. And that can be very true. And also, I can miss them. And those conflicting emotions are sometimes really challenging for us to maneuver through and understand. Oftentimes, if we are people of faith and somebody passes away, we often share with people, but they're in a better place. And my faith tells me, yes, that's true. And also, I may have wanted that person here with me a little bit longer. And we have to maneuver through those conflicting emotions. So that is kind of how we can describe grief. The other thing is that grief is most often talked about and dealt with in our world as an intellectual kind of thing. And I would encourage you to think about the fact that it is not our brains that hurt when we go through grief, it is our heart. and we try and walk through grief through our heads. And that's two different, kind of realities that we have to try and navigate. And I think that that's partially because we have been given, and I think our society is really comfortable with this. We like lists, or we like stages, or we like to know, I'm going to go through these experiences and then I will be on the other side of something. And many of you are probably very familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work, and it's described as the 5 stages of grief, and we may go through anger and bargaining and denial and acceptance and all of these different phases, and we believe that, okay, after we've walked through all those, we will not be in pain any longer. And what a lot of folks don't know is that Dr. Kubler-Ross's work was actually based on research she was doing about people who had been given a terminal diagnosis. And it was about these stages that people who were dying were going to walk through, not those that would be left behind. And so our grief journey doesn't fit into these very, distinct stages. But what we do all share is that we often have common reactions to grief. Now, your reactions versus my reaction are as varied as many people as we have here in the room today. They also vary from loss to loss. So I shared with you about the death of my father. My guess is that there's many other people here in the room today who have experienced the death of a parent. Their hands, I see lots of hands. But I would tell you, our reactions to that loss, even though we can all say we have the common experience of losing a parent, what that journey through grief is going to be unique to each and every one of us. And the reason it is unique is because every one of our relationships with that parent is different. Some of us have the ability to be blessed with what I call a relationship that lived in the land of rainbows and unicorns and sunny skies, and, life was pretty imperfect. For some of us, that relationship with that parent might have been very, very different. And it could have included things such as abuse or neglect or addiction in the family or mental health crises in the family or a host of 101 other things. So we also have to acknowledge that every person grieves differently. So oftentimes we will tell somebody, well, when I lost my dad, I did this, and that's what you should do, and you'll feel better. Or we will say, I know how you feel. But the truth is, we don't know how somebody else feels. We never can say that we know how somebody else feels. We can know how we walked through that experience, but oftentimes we try and put that on other people. And that can be a really dangerous thing to do because each and every loss experience is unique and different to the individual. Sometimes as we're walking through that journey of grief, we can have emotions that vary day to day. We may have good days, we have bad days, we may have days where we don't want to get out of bed. We may have days where we kind of feel like our new self. I had a friend who, after my dad died, said, you just have to get used to your new normal. And oh my gosh, that made me mad. Mad. Because I didn't want a new normal. I wanted my old normal. So, even people with the best intentions can say things to us that don't work or they don't help. We can have physical reactions. Some of us may not be able to sleep at all. Some of us may want to sleep all the time. Some of us may have no appetite. Some of us may want to eat every sugary and high carb thing in sight. So everybody can have very different emotional and physical reactions. Our behavioral reactions can be vastly different. Some of us may crave and seek to be around other people. I would tell you that neurologically, we are hardwired to seek connection in times of stress and loss. Others want to be alone. I think that oftentimes we are given a lot of misinformation about how to grieve, and we call those the myths of loss. And one of those myths of loss is to grieve alone. Oftentimes, we may have received a message through our years of upbringing that we're not to show emotion in front of other people, or that we are not to talk about difficult stuff going on in our family with other people. So we keep our mouths shut and we kind of suffer in silence because we've been given that message to grieve alone. We also may try really hard to keep busy. That is another big myth of loss. We tell people just stay busy, stay active. Now, I do believe that when we are in times of crisis or struggle, sticking to a routine is really valuable. Being active physically can help us. But some people take this to the point of extremes. I've worked with a lot of people who have kept themselves so busy, they'll get up super, super early, and they will keep themselves so busy until their head hits the pillow at night so that they can just kind of pass out from exhaustion so that they don't have to think or they don't have to feel. So keeping busy can also be, a problematic behavior that sometimes we all engage in. Another thing is that we often seek to feel better. And we engage in what I call STIRBs, and that stands for short-term energy relieving behaviors. And STIRBs kind of give us the illusion that we feel better, but they don't really make us feel better. They make us feel momentarily different. Give you an example that we're all familiar with. Let's say we experience a death loss. What do people, oftentimes our church family, our friends, our family that might be on the peripheral of that loss, what is some of the first stuff that starts arriving at our home? Food, yeah. Food is a STIRB. It doesn't make us feel better, but boy, sometimes in the moment that chocolate cake can make me feel different for just a few minutes. So we seek those things out. For some people, that can be substances, that can be drugs, alcohol, but we seek things that make us feel different. We also often engage in comparing our losses to other people. So I'm gonna go back to my loss experience with my dad. He passed away in May. I happened at that time to work at the University of Findlay, and I did not work during the summer months. So I thought, okay, what is this new normal? What do I do? My kids were old enough that they were going to sports practices and with friends and coming and going like they do in the summer. So I thought, well, I can't sleep. I have no appetite. So I thought, I'm gonna go to the cardio center on campus and I'm gonna work out, which sounds like a really healthy, fabulous thing to do, right? So I started going and working out. And it started with my workouts being like an hour. And then suddenly it was an hour and a half. And then it was 2, 2.5, 3. I wasn't eating. And, you put those two things together, and suddenly I drop a lot of weight quick. And I get ready to go back to work at the start of the new academic year, and what do you think people said to me? You look great. What have you been doing? So I heard that is what in the grief recovery method we call Academy Award recovery. I thought, I must have done this grieving thing so great. I have been working out. My other stirb was reading. My husband at one point said, how many more books on your Kindle are you going to buy this week? Now, on the surface, those don't sound like bad coping mechanisms, right? In conjunction with my excessive working out, my not eating, my not sleeping, and my reading, the other thing I did is that I would drive myself to that Speedway gas station on Trenton Avenue every time I needed gas. I live on the other side of town. Didn't matter. If another car was parked at that pump I was at when that phone call came in from my dad that I didn't answer, I would park and I would wait. And I would go to that parking spot so that I could punish myself, so that I could deal with kind of that self-shaming, regret, and what I just viewed as inexcusable behavior for not answering that phone. Now, my dad never would have thought a thing about the fact that I was headed to work and that I was too busy in that moment to answer that phone and that I would come, go to work, call him that night or call him the next day. It wasn't as though I felt my dad was angry with me, but I was so angry with myself. When we talk about grief, we distinguish between people that are being in immense pain versus the normal, natural reaction to a loss. All of you listening to me talk about excessively working out, not eating, buying books left and right to keep my brain busy so I didn't have to think about my loss, and that self-punishment of driving across town to sit at that gas pump to punish myself, probably are thinking, okay, that does not sound healthy or like you were doing well at all. But as I was in my journey of grief, I didn't have that insight. I didn't have that ability to see that that was self-destructive. And that's why we need the people around us to help us and to help us walk through that journey when we are not handling things the best that we possibly can. We also oftentimes tell people other myths. We often say time heals all wounds. That's a very common thing we say. So a lot of people would say to me, just give it 6 months, give it a year, it'll all be okay. And an analogy that I like to use is that if any of us were to walk out of here and walk through the parking lot and fall and maybe break an arm or a leg, we would never say to somebody, well, time will heal that. We would say, you need to go see a doctor and have that arm set so that it can heal correctly. Your bone, if you don't give it attention, may heal, but it's going to heal incorrectly, and it's going to heal in a way that causes you more pain down the line. So it is not about time itself when we are walking through a journey of grief. It is about what we do during that time to heal. And that's going to be different for everyone. Obviously, what I started doing during that journey of grief, of not sleeping, not eating, exercising excessively, driving to the Speedway gas station, was not the right thing to do during that time. Once I learned better, I was able to do better. And that's kind of what changed my world when I went through the grief recovery method. We know that that unresolved grief or that pain is usually about things that we have wished we would have said or done differently, better, or more. I wished I would have answered that phone call. Sometimes we may say, I wished I would have told a loved one more, I love you, or you made a significant impact on my life. For some of us who have experiences with trauma, abuse, challenges in our world, sometimes those things that we wish we would have said or done differently, better, or more might be, I wish I would have told he or she how badly they hurt me, or express some of those emotions. We often also struggle with complications with our grief when we have unrealized hopes, dreams, or expectations. So if somebody has mental health issues, past traumas, have not had a parenting relationship with the land of rainbows and unicorns and the sun shining, often struggle with thinking, this doesn't look like the other people I go to school with. This isn't what their world is like. Why doesn't my world get to look the way everybody else's? If you've lost somebody at a young age, if you've ended a relationship that you thought was with somebody you were going to grow old with, and that ends, we may say, I thought I was going to go into retirement with this person. I thought we were going to enjoy our grandchildren together. So we have those unrealized hopes, dreams, or expectations for the way life might have been. Grief that gets complicated or unresolved, it's also always about undelivered communication that is emotional in nature. It is about our feelings, what we wish we would have said that we didn't say. And remember I said grief is not about an intellectual experience. It's not our brains that are hurt, it's our heart. So we have to be able to give recognition to those emotions. We have to be able to name them, honor them, and voice them in some way, shape, or form. And for some people, our STRBs then become really complicated experiences with unresolved grief, because that can lead to abuse of substances. It can, for some people, lead to, excessive retail therapy, pornography, gambling, you name it, it can happen. So all of those elements are about that unresolved grief. The biggest thing I always encourage people, though, is that you don't have to suffer or feel alone. I shared with you a little bit of insight today about the grief recovery method. It's not the only approach out there. I can tell you that for me, it changed my life. As I sat in that hotel conference center for a week, in those seats with those boxes of tissues, on day one, I didn't think I could walk through that process. And I stuck it out, and I was able to recognize, give voice, and express all of those emotions that I had not been able to do for about 18 months after my dad's death. And it felt like the weight of the world came off my shoulders. I never once gave a second thought about ever going back to that Speedway gas station to sit at that pump and punish myself. I was able to speak up and give voice to asking my stepmother for my father's ashes to return. And most of all, those pictures I showed you at the beginning of my presentation, I was able to go with my son, who happened to be on fall break for his college, and I went back to Yosemite National Park. And my son and I went on the last hikes that my father had went on. That picture of me in that tree was a picture that he had taken while he, of himself at that same tree. And I was able to find the first responders who tried to save him. And if you would have ever asked me if I thought I could have ever done that at the time of his loss, never in a million years. And the powerful thing that happened when I had that privilege to talk to those first responders is that they were also the owners of the campground where my dad had collapsed. And I walked in and I told this story, and the girl at the counter said, "Oh my gosh, I remember when that happened, but the campground has sold. And so if you go into town, you can find the previous owners." And as we stood there chatting, she said, "Oh my gosh, the wife just pulled up." And that was a God thing. And I got to talk to her. And she said, "My husband and my daughter were the volunteer, first responders who tried to save them or save him." And she said they have struggled with this ever since. Because my stepmother, they lived in Kentucky, so she was stranded there alone. It was a time of year when certain roads in the park were not open. So getting my father's remains out of the national park and all of those logistics. So she was stuck there a long time, and they remembered her being stuck there with nobody and how they had tried so desperately to save him. And so I walked away from that encounter with passing along a couple of boxes of Dietz's covered pretzels and feeling like I had completed a journey that will forever be marked in some of the most difficult days of my life, and also a journey that represents how I found healing and peace and comfort. And that's incredible to be able to stand up here and say. And I would tell you that the grief recovery method may not be for everybody. So I did share just some other opportunities in our community that are available. Living Through Loss is through Bridge Home Health and Hospice, and it's a support group type of dynamic. The Blue Christmas service is held every year at St. Andrews, and this year it's on December 21st. We have a couple of free community offerings for the grief recovery group coming up in January. If anybody's interested, I did bring some flyers for that. And then if you are looking for being able to walk through your grief journey, no matter what it's tied to, related in a faith manner, there's also Grief Share that is offered at St. Mark's. So those are just a couple of opportunities. I put my contact up there in case anybody wants to reach out, but I feel incredibly honored to be able to share my journey that I took, and hope that if nothing else, you walk away with maybe just a different lens for the experience of grief and loss, and how you might be able to honor or give grace to yourself if you're walking that journey right now, or how you may be able to do that for other people. So thank you very much. I believe we're going to hear a couple of words from Nicole Coleman, and thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could be with you there in person as Jenny delivered this important message on the topic of grief and the grief recovery method. This is such an important process for us to grieve and mourn and process our emotions and the unfinished business in relationships after we deal with a loss or suffer a loss. And loss can come in so many different ways. It can be loss through what most of us think of with death, but also divorce. I know during COVID, a lot of us lost a lot of experiences. Maybe you had a kid who was in high school and you didn't get to have all of the normal senior year experiences, or someone graduating from high school or college. Births were different. There just were so many things different. during COVID, and this process of mourning and grieving is very important. And the way that this relates to and connects to who we are as God's creation and spiritual beings is God created us with our emotions. And in order for us to help other people, we need to not only be spiritually healthy, but we need to also be emotionally healthy. And it is important for us to take the time to grieve and process our emotions when we have dealt with loss. And let's face it, we all have things that we have lost, lives, people, relationships that we have lost in our life. And I am just so incredibly grateful that Jenny was willing to bring her talents and her knowledge to share with us today. I hope that you will take time to talk with her, pick up some flyers about the different grief recovery method and other grieving sessions that will be taking place in our community in the near future, so that we can grieve with one another, we can heal together, so that we can be a part of bringing healthy emotions and recovery to the people in our church, the people in our community, and our families, and our workplace. If you will come forward, we will close the service as we normally do. Thank you so much.
Come on forward, let's worship together.
I worship you. promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. Oh, let's sing that again. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. Even when we don't see it, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. And even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. And even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop now. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. Oh, the waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. Oh, that is who you are. 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 It's who you are now, Jesus. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. Let's sing it out one more time. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. It's who you are.
We're glad you're here this morning. We had Nicole, who is out of town, share on a video. One of the reasons for that was, in addition to the different sessions that Jenny alluded to that are going on in the community, Nicole is planning to have a small group here at the church, and you'll be hearing some more information about that around grief. Even though I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. What a fitting song, because that's the promise that we have, is that God is working in the midst of what we face, in the midst of our grief, when that is faced. Father, thank you for that promise. Thank you for being with us. And we stand on those promises. In your name, amen.